Welcome back to the Fitness Philosopher podcast. This is your host, Adam Fisher. This week, our topic is going to be another fitness topic. What we're going to be talking about is long-term exercise solutions for weight loss. So what you can do in the gym to help yourself lose weight. Now, if maybe you don't already, but first of all, the most important thing I should always say is that exercise may not be the most important thing. Diet is probably more important if you're looking for weight loss. But what we know is that the studies have shown that people who actually combine the two tend to do much better. So if you think about the fact that someone just tries to diet and they don't really adopt sort of a healthier lifestyle, they just sort of, try to force a diet on themselves, then oftentimes, they rebound and they don't lose weight long term. But when you take into account stuff like exercise, when people really start developing a healthier lifestyle and they actually start trying to sort of know what they're doing and how they should be eating and how they should be working out and all that, and how they should be taking care of themselves, then is when we tend to see, real weight loss happen. So what we see is that, again, combination of the two is best. A combination of exercise and diet is what works the best for us. At the same time, again, diet is often a little bit more important because when you eat things, it's easier not to eat things than to work them off later. Is sort of the short version. So if I eat 500 calories worth of food and then I try and exercise that off later, that's about an hour or two, an hour and a half of, really strenuous activity maybe. So do I want to cut out the 15 minutes that it took to eat those 500 calories, or do I want to cut out the hour and a half that it would take to work them off later? Usually it's, from a time-saving perspective, it's the latter. You don't want to have to exercise it off later. So it's a lot easier not to eat things than to have to burn them off. So, diet is always king. Diet is always a little bit more important. But again, adherence long-term, you need a combination of the two. So what we hear most often is that cardio is what burns more calories. That's sort of the myth that we hear. We hear that cardio burns more calories and, weight training builds muscle, but that's, not as good or whatever. And this sort of plays into most people's fears about fitness and about going into the gym and exercising. And so a lot of people just kind of go to a big gym and they just hop on the treadmill because that seems easy, and then they just run for a while and that's it. The problem with that is that cardio doesn't really burn the most calories long term. So what happens is, in the short term, cardio will probably burn more calories. If you did a workout that is cardio heavy, a lot of running, or you did versus a workout that involved a good amount of weight training, chances are that the cardio workout would get you sweatier and burn more calories. And since you feel, and that's another thing, is that people sort of tend to confuse how sweaty they are and how much they feel like they've worked out with how effective the workout is, which is not always the case. So they get themselves sweaty, they mess around on the treadmill for a half hour, and they feel like they've done a good job. But the problem is that cardio burns a good amount of calories short term, but long term, it doesn't really do anything to improve your metabolism. It will improve your resting heart rate. The thing is that cardio does not improve your metabolism, does not actually improve the amount of calories that you burn from week to week. And this is actually a problem as well, because as you lose weight, your metabolism goes down. So as you lose weight, you have less body mass, and that means that your body has to work less hard to do things. So you actually burn fewer calories as you work out, and you also burn fewer calories throughout the day. And so what happens is you'll find that as you lose weight, you have to work harder and harder and harder to burn more and more calories because you're not improving your metabolism. Your metabolism is just going down. Another issue is that people need to increase the difficulty, and they often don't do that. So if you hop in on a treadmill and let's say you put it at 5 miles an hour, a nice jog, and you do that for a half hour, and you get sweaty and you feel like you've done a good job, and then you leave. And then let's say you did the same thing again tomorrow, and then the day after that, and then the day after that, and so let's say you keep doing it for a few months. What happens is, as your body gets better at doing the exercise, as it gets more efficient at doing these things, it gets easier. And as it gets easier, your body burns fewer calories doing it, because again, your body has gotten more efficient at doing those actions. So what happens is that first that might burn, say, 250, 300 calories for you, and then over time it might burn a little bit less. It might burn 280. It might burn 260. It might burn 240, 220, 200. It might go down and down and down as you get better and better at it. And so what happens is, and again, these numbers are just guesstimations. This isn't anywhere near exact. But what happens is, oftentimes, people don't increase the activity, increase the difficulty of the activity, and so they don't see any results because, again, they just get less and less out of it each time. So how are ways to get around this? Well, you have to improve the difficulty of it somehow. The most common one is that people will just sort of keep going for longer and longer and longer. So they say, oh, I did 20 minutes, now I can do 25 minutes, and now 30 minutes, and so on and so forth. The problem with this is that you don't have an endless amount of time to spend in the gym, period. Not even professional athletes have an endless amount of time to spend in the gym. Sooner or later, you're going to get tired out, you're going to get exhausted, you're not going to want to do it anymore, either psychologically or physically. So it's better to increase difficulty, generally, than to increase time. And you can do both, there's nothing wrong with that. One day you could do 40 minutes instead of 30, and another day you could do 30 minutes at a faster pace. And maybe then the next time you can do 45 minutes instead of 40, and you can increase the pace even further on your 30. Stuff like that. But it's not a good idea to simply do the same thing over and over, whatever you're doing. And it's generally not a good idea just to keep increasing the time either, because, again, that becomes pretty boring pretty quickly. Likewise, just increasing the speed or the incline all the time, it can also actually kind of get, not boring, but it can get sort of grinding in that, sooner or later you're going to hit a point at which you're going way too fast or at such a high incline that you're not really enjoying it at all because it's just destroying you every time you come into the gym. So again, sort of a combination of the two. You'll want to increase time, you want to increase difficulty, you'll want to increase speed, you'll want to increase incline, but you don't have to do just one or the other. Another thing to note is that sprints or intervals don't really have this issue as much, because what happens is if you do a sprint, you're naturally going as fast as you can, and your body's naturally adjusting to that over time. As you get faster, you go faster and faster and faster. So the difficulty is always on the cutting edge of what will actually be helpful for you. So they've actually done studies that have shown that sprints will actually improve body composition and your weight loss a lot better over time, even at vastly smaller margins. I think if I remember correctly, the study was something like 8 to 10 intervals of sprints, which can take you 15 or 20 minutes, did better long term than an hour of traditional steady state cardio. Steady state is what we call just going at one pace, or just sort of a long run, just not really increasing the difficulty throughout or anything like that. And sprints aren't for everybody. Sprints are definitely very challenging, particularly for people who are very overweight. You might not be able to sprint at all. You'd have to work up to that. But for other people who can handle sprints already, that is potentially a superior method of cardiovascular activity. And you can do sprints, of course, with either just running, or you can do it with a bike. There's other ways to do it as well, but those are sort of the simplest ones, the easiest ones. And if you're going to do sprints, I don't recommend doing it on a treadmill, just because treadmills take a little while to adjust. I recommend doing that outside. Go out on a sidewalk and get some sprints in, because then you can really auto-regulate properly. Your body can really adjust to pushing yourself as hard as you can, whereas a treadmill only pushes you as hard as you tell it to. Okay, but moving on. So that's kind of the picture of what cardio does. Cardio burns calories short term, and again, it'll improve your resting heart rate, and that's important. It's very healthy. It is needed long term. But at the same time, let's look at sort of what weight training does for you, because weight training will improve your musculature. It will improve your metabolism. In many cases, actually, as you lose weight, assuming that you are maintaining or developing muscle mass, you can actually sort of not necessarily improve your metabolism, but maintain it to a much greater extent, or even potentially improve it. And the biggest problem with that, obviously, is that people are scared of weight training. It's a lot more complicated to understand. There's so much info out there telling us what to do that it gets very easy to get overwhelmed by all of it. And then on top of that, we know that the gym space is a very sort of hegemonic, white dude-dominated space, and that space is potentially very hostile to new people. I can't tell you, so many people that I hear who have issues getting into the gym simply because they feel intimidated or simply because they feel like they don't belong. And I'll tell you, first of all, that a lot of in many cases, that's just sort of posturing, unless you're sort of walking into a really hardcore gym. In which case, why are you even in there, honestly? A lot of people really aren't as mean or as exclusive as they might come off. Or, they might be doing it unintentionally. But the other thing is that so long as you know enough, you can pass pretty easily. And so long as you can pass, you can get by. There's lots of dumb-looking people in the gym that, like, for example, to an expert, they look dumb, but to the ordinary guy, they look like they're doing something worthwhile or important, or they seem like they're doing it right. So you don't have to know everything, certainly. And the thing, too, of course, is that as experts turn into experts, sometimes they turn into douchebags, but very, very much more often, I would say, experts turn into nicer people. They know how to be friends with people in the gym. They understand that the gym is an important place, and they are friendly and helpful, and they'll try not to be calling people out on stuff or anything like that. The thing is that experts tend to be experts because they are compassionate, helpful people who really want to help you or help in the gym. Most of the sort of animosity that we get from the weight room is from sort of intermediate guys or maybe even beginner guys who think that they know a lot more than they do. And so as long as you can sort of get around those people, you'll be doing fine. And another problem, of course, is women, because women have a much harder time adjusting to the weight room than men do, simply because historically, culturally, we have this idea that women shouldn't lift heavy weights. And we have these stupid female-centric weight routines that use nothing but 2-pound dumbbells and stuff like that. And those are garbage. They don't really work. They're endurance routines, and they're not really going to help build very much muscle. Which, of course, if you're exercising to lose weight, should really be your primary goal. The good thing about weight training is that if you're doing it right, what you're doing is you are properly adding weight, or you're properly adding repetitions each time, so that it is always appropriately challenging for you. Unlike cardio, where you might be more tempted to just sort of do the same thing over and over again and break a sweat and think that you're doing okay, people tend to understand that in weight training you should really be pushing yourself and trying to do more each time. That's not to say that people don't. You might get a guy who comes in and does 3 sets of 12 with the 20-pound dumbbells for bicep curls every week, forever. Well, obviously that's not going to do anything, because sooner or later his body again is going to get used to that activity and then isn't going to get as much out of it. But most people who do lift weights at least understand that you do need to always be improving the difficulty, and that if you're not improving the difficulty, you're not going to keep seeing changes in your body and in your performance. And the thing too is that you can often get a comparable calorie count to traditional cardio, whether it's sprints or steady state. And certainly there are some motions that burn more calories than others. So we know that lower body tends to burn more calories than upper body. That's because your lower body actually accounts for, a significant majority of the musculature in your body, and most people don't really realize this maybe because they haven't really trained their legs, or, they just haven't really thought about it, I guess. But the thing is, you're walking around on your legs all day. Your legs are built for power. Your upper body is built for strength, certainly, but it's also built for sort of manipulation and fine motor tasks and things like that, whereas your feet are just designed to keep pounding the ground and keep going. So typically, full body exercises or lower body exercises all tend to burn a lot of calories. And if you're doing a lot of repetitions, and if you're doing in maybe sort of a circuit-based training system where you're hitting a lot of stuff really quickly and moving on, you're going to be seeing that you are burning a lot of calories, probably something comparable to what you would have burned if you just went for a hard run. And again, you'll break a sweat and you'll really feel like you did something. But oftentimes, and this is kind of getting back to what I was saying earlier, it's not just about breaking a sweat. It's about sort of what the workout will do for you. And you can literally come into the gym and lift some weights and maybe, just barely sort of break a sweat because you're not really pushing yourself too hard cardiovascularly. And you're getting long rests in between sets, so your heart's recovering. You're not really being forced to push in an already fatigued state as much. And you're getting a good workout in. You're going to build muscle. You're going to improve your metabolism. But again, you haven't really sweat very much or really thought that you're really getting a super hardcore workout in. And that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And it's also important to understand that it's cool to go into the gym and occasionally just not feel like you're at the top of your game and, not feel like you really want to do anything. But so long as you're in the gym and you do something, that's better than not having done anything at all. It's important just to sort of show up to the gym and just have fun, even if you can't do a hard workout, even if you can't really push yourself really hard like you might want to. And so what we see is that there's so many different ways to do cardio and so many different ways to do weight training. So first of all, that's sort of a misnomer to say, one is better than the other or worse than the other. But what we see is that they can often burn similar amounts of calories. Cardio is still going to burn more, yes, but it can often be very similar, provided that you know what you're doing and that you're sort of doing it in the right way. And another thing to sort of bring up is the question of calorie counts. People will ask me, how many calories do you think I burned in this workout? Or they might say, oh, look, this treadmill says that I burnt 700 calories, or something like that. So here's the thing. We don't really know what you burn during a workout. It's pure speculation. We have various methods of estimating how many calories you've burnt, but the problem is that the only ones that are actually very accurate require very expensive equipment. And you don't have that equipment as a rule. Unless you're an athlete at some kind of athletic training facility in a university or something along those lines, you are not, you have no clue what you're actually burning. And when it comes to stuff like your treadmill or your cardio machine, the surprising thing is that those numbers are actually extremely off. Like they can be way, way off. And here's why. There's two major factors. The first one is that they don't just count the calories that you burnt from that exercise, which is what you think is happening. That's sort of what they lead you to believe. They say, oh, this is how many calories you burned. So let's say they say you burned 700 calories. And you say, oh, that's great. I just burned 700 calories on this treadmill, right? Well, yes and no, because what happens is that maybe not a large, but a certain portion of those calories are actually just your base metabolic rate. So that's the calories that you would have burned on your own if you had just not gone on that treadmill. That's if you compared you standing around versus you on that treadmill. Let's say you standing around would have burned maybe 200 calories in that same time span. And that's just because your body burns calories just breathing and living. And then the other 500 calories are the calories that you would have burnt on that treadmill. So what happens is, of course, they can't actually distinguish, using your heart rate, they can't actually distinguish between the two. Because if you look at your heart rate while resting is at maybe, 40 or 50% of max. Your heart rate during an exercise will be, 60, 70, maybe higher than that, obviously 80, 90 if you're really pushing yourself percent. But if you think about it, you realize that 40 or 50% was already happening to begin with. So if you factor in the fact that you have to cut out, the existing base level, that actually takes off a lot because they can't actually split that up. They don't actually have your base heart rate to compare it to so that they can then factor that out. So they don't know. They can't take that out, and they don't know exactly how many calories your base metabolic rate was, so they just sort of leave that in there. And then they also can't account for stuff like your training level. So like I was saying earlier, how you get more and more, as you get more and more accustomed to an exercise, your body burns fewer calories each time you do it. So like I said, what might have taken you 300 calories one time starts taking you 280, 260, 240, etc. So here's what happens. The treadmills can't account for that either. So they can't take that away either. So what happens is that they will tend to overestimate how many calories you're burning there, because they'll treat everyone exactly like the same person who has zero competence who comes in and just works out for the first time. Everyone has that same base level, and instead of sort of being able to factor in how you actually body gets more efficient at it and burns fewer calories each time, it is going to use those base numbers. And so there's and this makes sense if you think about it. Treadmill and cardio equipment manufacturers have a sort of an incentive to keep showing you big numbers. to show you these numbers that say, oh, you burned 700 calories, that's great. Of course, the fact is that that's generally not what happened. It's not true. It could be that you burned something more like 300 calories. Some of those calories might have just been calories from your base metabolic rate, and then you might not have burned as many calories as the next guy because you have a little bit more skill at the movement. So what happens is it might be something vastly different than that 700, and they don't really have any way of getting to that point because, again, the equipment required to really analyze that and give you an accurate number is much more expensive. The most accurate way that we have is, as I understand, is the breathing tube apparatus. So it actually measures every breath that you take and the oxygen content that goes into and out of your body, and it uses that to determine how many calories you're burning. But again, without a device that can actually do that, they're estimating based on these outside numbers, and these outside numbers are not 100% accurate. There's many ways for them to be off. And like heart rate monitors, like really good heart rate monitors, like your Fitbit and your stuff like that, those will tend to be a little bit more accurate because they have a little bit more data on you to work with, and they can use that to sort of improve those numbers. But again, it's still it's still going at it the wrong way. It's still trying to sort of estimate based on outside numbers rather than actually being able to actually measure how many calories you're burning directly. So that's a huge issue because and that makes people think that a lot of the times that they burn, they go, oh, well, I burned, 1,000 calories doing cardio the other day. How is it that I'm not losing weight? And it's because the answer is that you weren't really burning 1,000 calories doing cardio. You were probably burning a lot, significant number less than that. So there's no way to really know how many calories you're burning in a workout. Again, you can get yourself a Fitbit, you can get yourself a advanced heart rate monitor type thing, but that's the best you can do, and it's still a very rough estimate. What you would see is that if we had the expensive equipment, and if you could test it, chances are that those numbers would be a lot more in line than you expect, and that's a huge thing. That's why people tend to think that cardio is so much more calorie efficient because they get these huge inflated numbers from their treadmill heart rate monitor or their own heart rate monitor, strap-on heart rate monitor. But again, these numbers can be very way off. So to sort of get back to the original questions, the original question is, what is the best long-term solution for weight loss? Well, it's certainly not just cardio, because if you did just cardio, you burn a lot of calories short term, but then as soon as you stop doing it, you start putting weight back on very quickly, because the only thing you're burning a lot of calories daily, but your metabolism is low. Now, the same sort of coin, if you did just weight training, your metabolism will be high, and you'll actually be able to maintain a leaner state for longer if you just did weight training, because you're not going to have as much issue with day to day. But long term, you'll still see that you pack on weight, and in many cases, weight training alone, even if you combine a good diet with it, isn't necessarily enough to get you as lean as you might want. So what happens is a combination is superior, is the best. So what you want to do both cardio and weight training. Weight training to improve your metabolism and to sort of give you safeguards against maybe you have to take a week off long term. Don't want to have to suddenly pack on 5 or 10 pounds in that week. But at the same time, you need cardio to sort of round it out and to make sure that day to day you're still burning a good amount of calories. Now, that's not to say that I recommend doing a bunch of cardio and a bunch of weight training on the same day. Yes, maybe if you did it in separate workouts, maybe you did a morning workout that was cardio and an evening workout that was weight training, and you make sure that you're properly getting good nutrition throughout the day to maintain that. But of course, what tends to be best for non-athletes, ordinary average people, is just to take different days for each one. So if you do a hard cardio workout on one day and a hard weight training day on another, then that tends to be best. You can still do some cardio on your weight training days in the same workout, but you've just got to keep it lighter and more manageable. Maybe just 10 or 15 minutes at a time, nothing too crazy, just so that you're not really interfering with... These two types of training can be very different on your body, and so you don't want them to sort of conflict with each other. So what you're going to do is you're going to put them on different days. So you might have one day that's just weight training and one day that's just cardio, or you could do days, again, that are mixed. So you'd have a bit of weight training, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and then maybe 10 or 15 minutes of cardio. Those are your options. And I would recommend going back to my week 3 or my number 3 podcast, which is the best basic way to get in great shape, which in that I recommend sort of 2 days working on pure strength for lifting, 2 days working on endurance, and 2 days working on size. And that's a whole different sort of can of worms. But that's a really good basic plan, and that sort of it implements the rules that I've been discussing here of, again, for weight loss, you really want to be combining your cardio and your weight training. So a good, ideal, long-term exercise solution for weight loss is, again, a combination of the two. So I hope that helped you guys this week. I've been rambling a little bit, I know. Maybe talked a little bit too long. No, actually, good amount, about 30 minutes as usual. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to be moving actually soon, so the podcast might get a little shaky for a few weeks. But after that, I'll be right back to doing the same good old work that I've always done, and I look forward to just being able to interact with more people in the future. So, as always, this is Adam Fisher, and I will see you guys next time. Hi everyone. If you like what we do here, feel free to support me in any way that you can. It's tough making content for people for free. So, if you'd like to, go ahead and check out my website at www.philosopher-warrior.com. Or we're on iTunes now as an official podcast. So go ahead and check us out in iTunes. Give us a rating. That helps us climb up the ranks, gets us more exposure. Anything that you can do would be just so amazing, and I would love you guys so much. It's just amazing to be able to do this sort of work and to try and help change people's lives. And it's also amazing to get feedback from my friends as well. So my inbox is always open. Don't hesitate to reach out to me at THEGN@gmail.com. That's THEGN@gmail.com. You can also check me out on social media. I'm on Twitter at ThaneTweets, at THEGN, So, just looking forward to seeing you guys again soon. Hey everyone, Adam here again. I'd like to announce that I'm very happy to have launched my new Patreon service with lots of just amazing stuff, amazing content for everyone out there. So if you're interested in supporting the show, just go ahead and reach out to patreon.com/gains. That is GAINS. Patreon.com/gains. Basically, I've got all sorts of rewards out there. You can get copies of, a free program, or not free, but just $1. So it might as well be free, right? I'm sure you can spare $1. You spend that on like a can of soda. So for $1, you can get a copy of a 12-week training program that you can use to sort of kickstart your fitness journey. For $10, you can get a copy of my first book, The Uplift Method. We've also got T-shirts. We have a group coaching program in which you get semi-standardized programs, as well as access to a community on Facebook that you can interact with just to help you with your fitness goals. And for $100, we offer totally personalized one-on-one coaching. So if you are interested in, or if you want to support the show, please give to us on Patreon, and we give back to you with the best content that we can, just so that you can see the best results and so that you can get everything out of fitness that you've always hoped for. So as always, it's great to talk to everyone. It's great to have the chance to do and run this podcast. So please don't hesitate to check it out. Patreon.com/gains, and any little bit helps. Every single dollar helps me buy more Taco Bell. It helps me talk about lifting weights. It helps me talk about how you shouldn't be afraid to be yourself and to live in your body and have fun with fitness. So I love you guys all, and I will talk to you again soon.